you go ahead and cancel me now. I kind of enjoyed the first Joker. I know Chris is gonna. Yep. I'm on r/red pill every day.
Hey there, Sam Sanders here. Thank you so much for checking out my show. This is a pop culture and entertainment show that asks big questions and offers hot takes about the culture. This episode, a topic that I have a lot of hot takes and big questions about. Movies. And not good movies. Bad movies. Flops. Disasters. I'm obsessed with movies that do badly, especially the ones that become camp classics after their failures. I want to break down the 4 biggest flops of the last decade this episode. And to do so, I'm joined by 2 movie experts who host a podcast that I thoroughly enjoy. Welcome. Come on in. Tell folks who you are and what your podcast is all about.
I'm Lizzie Bassett. I'm one of the hosts of What Went Wrong. I'm a podcast producer. That's my job. What a delight to talk about movies all the time. And joined by my co-host, Christopher.
I'm Chris Winterbauer. I am the co-host of What Went Wrong alongside Lizzie. I'm a writer and a director, and I technically haven't directed a flop yet because my movies haven't gone to theaters, but I think
he's a success.
Yeah, exactly. I think we can definitely say one of them was kind of a flop.
Your career.
So I have some personal experience here as well.
One of them was shelved by David Zaslav.
Well, we'll get spoilers. Spoilers.
Sorry.
We'll get there.
Listen. In my opinion, if David Zaslav dislikes your stuff, that means it's good, because he has no taste.
I agree.
And that's another conversation.
But David, if you want to greenlight something of mine, feel free, sir.
Yeah. Lizzie, Chris, thank you both for joining me. I have been obsessed with your podcast for a while. I told you before, I binged many episodes during a long Thanksgiving in Prattville, Alabama last year. And I can't get over the way y'all broke down the movie Gremlins. Should have been a flop, but it wasn't.
No.
That's right.
Love that film. Love that film.
So many puppets. Too many puppets, arguably.
Never too many puppets.
Never too many.
Never too many.
That was a fun one.
Original IP, no stars.
Original
total success.
IP, no stars. What happened to that? Ugh.
Well, that's a theme I think we're going to cover today because there's no original IP that we've got in here.
And lots of stars.
Lots of stars.
Doing weird things.
Lots of falling stars.
Yes.
With that, let's get into it. Y'all sent our team over here a list of 6 flops to possibly run through. We consulted and picked our top 4. These are from the last decade or so. And I believe it's only fitting that we start this conversation about the biggest flops of the last decade by beginning with the flop that might never die, 2019's movie adaptation of the Broadway musical Cats.
Yes.
Oh, I get excited just saying that. This is such a flop, but such a cultural icon.
Yeah. And I think the expectations were so lofty. That's what differentiates it from any other film that we're going to talk about today. Not just commercially, but as Lizzie mentions, there were Oscar aspirations here.
Yeah.
I blacked that out. Who was going to get an Oscar for Cats?
Well, they thought everyone. they thought everyone.
All the
Let's
cats.
list to everyone. The
Every
everyone
cat.
cast included James Corden, Dame Judi Dench, Jason Derulo, Idris Elba, Jennifer Hudson, Ian McKellen, and then cherry on top of the cake, Taylor Swift. She was a cat up in there too.
Mm-hmm.
I blacked out that Idris Elba was in that
I think he
movie.
did too. I think he
God.
did too.
Yeah, there were Oscar goals for this. That was actually one of the reasons why, obviously with this movie, the VFX was much maligned as, something that looked ridiculous. However, I would argue that is not the problem with this movie at all, even though it looks insane. They have human hands. But whatever.
I remember
don't care.
the cat. I remember because I saw it in theaters, not sober. I remember fixating on like the cat's rear ends.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The CGI
Well, there's no beehole.
Yeah. But that was a big question, right, Lizzie? They went back and forth. Like, are we going to put the buttholes in?
I don't know if they ever actually were going to put the buttholes in. I think there was a rumor online. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Go
they
ahead.
rushed, so they rushed the whole VFX process because they were trying to hit an Oscars deadline.
Yeah.
Girl, stop.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was, listen.
All these people were like, yeah, maybe we just might.
100%, hundo percent. Tom Hooper was like, this is my next Oscar-winning picture. Ian McKellen, go lap that milk out of that bowl. And
So this film they rushed it so much and rushed the visual effects so much. As you mentioned, when the movie hits theaters and people see Judi Dench's human hand appear on the cat, they then, Universal Pictures, has to update the film's special effects while it's still in theaters.
yeah.
Insanity.
Yeah, that's like unheard
Insanity.
of. They sent a new cut out. Also, I think at the premiere, Tom Hooper was like, we were working on it until 48 hours ago. And it's like,
Bad
it
sign.
looks like it, buddy.
The hallucinogenic sequence of the cockroaches dancing is
delicious.
remains. If you watch that on any substance, you may never come back from your trip. Like it won't happen.
So let's just, for folks who have lived under a rock for the last 50 years and don't know what we're talking about, Cats was the film adaptation, animated / live action, of the legendary musical all about the story of a tribe of cats called the Jellicles. In this movie, right there, you're just like, this is absurd. Anywho, the Jellicles do, they decide which cat will ascend to the Heaviside layer and then come back to a new life. That's what the film was all about. Like,
Simple.
cat reincarnation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Based on the 80s musical by Andrew Lloyd Webber. It was weird on stage. Got even weirder in movie theaters. But this movie, and correct me on this if I'm wrong on the figures, y'all, the budget that they told us was $95 million, and the box office worldwide was about $75 million. So
That is
make
those
a
are the
flop.
numbers I have. Big time
That would-
flopper.
Definitely be a flop. And you'd have to imagine the budget was probably higher if they are rushing out VFX after the release of the film. So I would guess that it maybe even broke 100 million, for all we know. As Lizzie said, big time Oscar push, big time. I believe they had a for your consideration page up
They did.
for Cats in the fall as it was heading into theaters.
By the way, they removed about like 6 days after the movie came out, which
Yeah.
is so sad. It's so sad. They really thought they were going to do it.
Yeah. Flashback to that, like, opening weekend when Cats hits theaters. I remember being like, oh, this looks so bad. I'm going to take a few substances and go see this film. But what was that moment like? Y'all cover film, think about film. What was the cultural impact of Cats first weekend? Or at least reaction?
This was our first episode that we ever did. And I think it kind of seeing this movie sort of spurred us to think of like, how did this happen? Because it is such an unmitigated disaster. And it's fun. Like I enjoyed rewatching it, but just trying to break down the story of how did so many people say yes to this thing? And I think,
Why did they?
well, I think it's the theme of today is that this was existing IP. You said this was a massively successful West End originally and then Broadway musical. I think the thing, and you touched on this when you tried to explain the plot of Cats, is that there is no plot.
Because it's like a series of stories. Who wrote the stories that it's based on? Was it T.S. Eliot?
T.S. Eliot, and they're
yeah.
poems.
Poems.
They're loosely based on, what is the book name, Chris? It's something Practical Cats.
Practical Cats.
Yeah.
I can't remember the full book name. I owned it. Yeah.
And that's the whole thing. And also, like, nobody thought that Cats the musical was going to work. I want to just briefly read this quote, if I can.
Yeah.
Which is that Hal Prince, famed Broadway producer and director, Andrew Lloyd Webber was trying to explain Cats to him before it had come out. And he was like playing him some of the music. And Hal goes, "Andrew, I don't understand. Is this about English politics? Are those cats Queen Victoria, Gladstone, and Disraeli?" And Andrew Lloyd Webber looked at him like he'd lost his mind and said, "Hal, this is just about cats." And that's it. That's the problem with Cats. That's both the success of it on stage, I think, and the problem with the movie.
Well, then you have an Oscar-winning director
And an
Right.
Oscar-winning actress at this point, because Jennifer Hudson's in there.
Yes.
And
yes.
Dame Judi Dench, she has an Oscar, right? She has to.
Did she
Does
have
she
one for Notes on a
for
Scandal?
Notes on a
at
Scandal,
this
that's what I was
point?
wondering.
I think she
Okay.
did. Excuse me,
then-
old Doot in this. Old
Right.
Doot.
And Hooper had done Les Miserables. He'd done a musical,
Which got an Oscar for Anne Hathaway.
Yes.
and
earned that
made
one.
almost $500 million against a $60 million budget. It was wildly
did.
successful.
It was.
And
It
so
was.
I feel like you look at all these ingredients on paper and you say, who knows? I wouldn't have greenlit the Broadway show, but
Right.
that did really well.
It
So
worked, yeah.
why wouldn't I greenlight this? Everybody involved seems to know what they're doing.
I'll give you a lot of reasons.
Right. Well, but my point is when all the ingredients start to line up and you say, everybody involved in this, has a lot of clout and there's a lot of commercial success behind it. And then, of course, it was the harbinger of doom. The COVID-19 pandemic, tracked the opening of that movie.
Wait,
and
did they coincide?
yeah, because I believe the first signs of COVID were in December of that year,
yeah.
right when it was released. And then coming into 2019, this was one of the last movies released in
God.
theaters before everything shut down. I believe, Lizzie, it was one of the last movies we saw in theaters
It was the
before
second to last
everything.
movie.
What a way to walk into a global pandemic.
It really, really was.
Did Cats give us COVID?
I believe it gave us toxoplasmosis, and then we got COVID from that. Yeah.
Yeah. So then it just doesn't work. It is maligned and ridiculed for months. What is the lesson here? What is the lesson for Hollywood or for viewers or for you even of the flop that was Cats?
I think success in another format does not equate success on film. Especially if you don't have a smart way to make this make sense on film, don't do it. Part of the reason why it succeeded on stage was that there is no story, and tourists who didn't speak English could show up in New York and enjoy Cats because you don't need to. You don't need to know what they're saying. They're not saying anything. So yeah, I guess that's and don't abuse your poor VFX team because one thing about
Pay your
this that makes
VFX
me
people
mad.
right. And this is a common through line right now. For years, Marvel wasn't doing right by their VFX people, and it showed. This is pay your VFX people. Give them
them and give
time
them
to make the
time.
work. Yeah. Yeah.
I also think, hubris can be the death of a film before it's even released.
Yeah.
And I think that this movie had a target on its back coming into the release, partly because of how bullish everybody was around it. And that's something we've discussed on our podcast. And especially with the hyper online world that we live in today, I think a little humility can go a long way because there's this common adage, the only person who can make a hit is an audience. Nobody else knows what's going to work at any point in time.
Damn.
And so I think there was... it was an easy movie to take down because there were videos circulating of how seriously people were taking this on set. And again, kudos to them. There's really some fantastic craftsmanship in this movie. I think the VFX artist did yeoman's work with something very difficult. And then again, we're crapped on by Mr. Corden, for example, in
Yes,
that
at the
awards
Oscars.
show. Yeah, at the Oscars.
What did he do?
He and Rebel Wilson got up at the Oscars and presented. They may have actually been presenting a VFX award. I'm not sure, but I can't remember. But they, made some jokes at the expense of the Cats VFX team, and I just remember
in Cats
everybody
costumes.
laughing. Yeah, and I was just like, that's not it. That's
That's
cool.
not why this movie didn't work
No,
at all.
in fact, I liked the human hands.
Yeah.
Why not? I liked that Jennifer Hudson's robe disappears into her digital fur when she lays on the ground.
All I remember is Jennifer Hudson singing whatever sad song they have her sing in that movie.
Memory.
Her sad cat face emoted so much.
So much snot, though. They couldn't have CGI'd out
she's-
that snot.
Do cats generate snot? I guess cats generate snot.
If they're sick, what? Just maybe just go ahead and rotoscope out that snot.
Man. Anywho, all this to say, Cats, a flop I'm still kind of obsessed with. Listeners, viewers, I recommend you watch this film, not sober. Next flop, not about cats, but about clowns. Help me say this, because French is not any language. Joker, Folie,
Yeah.
That's
Folie
it.
à deux.
Folie à
Which-
deux. Okay.
Isn't that like a mental? Isn't that like a mental?
Yeah, Insanity of Two. It's like
Yes,
a communal
yeah.
hallucination.
Yeah.
That's what that movie was, it sounds like.
I think you're
Yeah.
right. An Insanity of Todd Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix.
I was going to
and
say, those
both
are the
of them
two. And Lady
need to go
Gaga's
ahead
sitting
and
there
have a
like,
seat.
can I sing?
Well,
Are you going to
listen,
let me sing?
Will you let me sing? I can sing well. Do you want me to do that
The beauty of
or
Lady
no?
Gaga is that every film she's done, save for A Star Is Born, she's performing one movie and the rest of the cast is doing another one.
Yeah, you're talking
I
about
like that.
House of Gucci, which I loved. It's
Father,
a mess.
son, House of Gucci.
House of Gucci.
Woo!
Delightful.
Yes, yes. So, all right, let's get into this movie. Such a big flop. Joker, Folie à deux. Closer, I don't know. Directed by Todd Phillips, written by Scott Silver and Todd Phillips. The sequel to the very, very, very successful Joaquin Phoenix Joker. Can we call it an origin film?
Well,
Sure.
can you? Because
I know.
Todd Phillips has thoughts and feelings on that as well, which I learned when I was looking into this a little bit. Yeah, I think he's trying to kind of shrug off some of the hate that Folie à deux got by saying that, no, you guys, you're dumb. It's not the Joker, you'll notice. It's just Joker, Sam. So his argument is this could just be an origin story of a guy named Arthur, who maybe isn't the Joker. Maybe he's the inspiration for. I can't even try to.
So
explain
Joker
this
is an
more.
idea.
Thank you.
We
That's
are
it.
all Spartacus. We are all Joker.
That's right.
We're
Soylent
all-
Green is Joker. Yes.
We're all jokes here.
yeah.
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 To me, this is the classic example of a movie that was never intended to exist. And you can feel it in every frame. And to be fair, this is the only movie on this list that I really don't like. I like cats. I admire cats. I will get to the other ones. I didn't like the first Joker, and I really don't like this Joker.
So yeah, my relationship with Joker, as soon as the trailer came out for that first Joaquin Phoenix Joker, I was like, this will probably get him an Oscar. It ain't for me.
No.
It felt very dark.
It felt
was
like an
gonna bring me
SNL
down.
parody.
Yes, but it was big, and I remember him being all goofy, running down the stairs, being weird, and it worked.
Yes.
But then I remember the movie itself, with its long tail, becoming a conversation about the internet and alt-right and like incels, because the manosphere glommed onto the first Joker. So then I was like, I'm definitely not going to see that.
Which I think is interesting, and go ahead and cancel me now. I kind of enjoyed the first Joker. I know Chris is
Incel.
gonna. Yep, I'm on r/red pill every day. But I think I will stand by the first one. I think that
Okay.
it is a good movie.
Okay.
I don't disagree with the commentary that came about because of it in terms of sort of what it may be condoning. Although I don't think it does. But
And by the way, I didn't dislike it because I thought it was
Chris just
some
hates it as a movie.
I just actually just didn't enjoy watching it. Like
Okay.
I have no
Yeah.
principles. I just didn't enjoy
Yeah.
the movie very much. And I will say, fantastic craftsmanship. The cinematography,
Yes, it's
the
beautiful.
makeup,
Okay.
the acting is very good. Obviously, the
Yeah.
costume design. I
Yeah.
think the movie looks amazing.
Yeah.
So that no disrespect to anybody.
You just
that
said
worked on
great
it.
gowns, beautiful gowns. That's always
Yes.
a diss. It looks amazing.
Was that Aretha?
yes,
Great
talking
gowns,
about
beautiful
talking
gowns.
about cat star Taylor Swift.
Yes.
Anywho.
You mentioned that sequence where he's, dancing down the stairs to Gary Glitter, which is a whole different issue. Noted sex offender who's in prison for a long time because of that.
Oh. Okay.
Which they knew. Anyway, whatever. There are problems with the first Joker, but like that sequence is what everybody remembers from that
Yeah.
movie. And
Yeah.
it's essentially a musical number. So you would think it's right there, right? Like this was fun. Joaquin Phoenix turned in this very over the top, like energetic performance. And let me ask you, was that in Folie à deux?
Yeah, the second movie's not energetic.
Okay. So y'all got to tell me what the second movie exactly is because I refuse to watch it.
That's fair.
From what I can tell, from what Bennett, our great producer, told me, it is a dark musical drama in which Joaquin Phoenix returns to play Arthur Fleck, a.k.a. the Joker. But in this one, Folie à deux, he is incarcerated in a mental institution where he meets the love of his life, Harley Quinn, played by Lady Gaga. and she sings too?
Does she?
Kind of.
Does she, Sam? Because this is the biggest problem with this whole movie is that they hired Joaquin Phoenix, who, of course, nominated for an Oscar for Walk the Line, and Lady Gaga.
Yeah.
Now, those are two people who I think we all can agree can sing. Yep, that's right. They don't.
Honestly, now I'm imagining A Star Is Born with Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga.
Would have been fun.
Might have enjoyed it better. No, Lizzie's like, I don't know.
I'm going to cancel myself. I'm a Bradley Cooper defender.
Well, and what's interesting, a lot of people think this movie, one of the reasons this movie spiraled out, Bradley Cooper had dissolved his producing partnership with Todd Phillips right before they went into
Bradley Cooper could have saved Joker Folie à Deux.
I honestly think maybe he could have, but they don't let them sing. The whole movie, they are pushing back on it being a musical. And
none of the numbers take off.
Sense.
It's like even the first number kicks in, you're kind of like, oh, this is a nice jolt because the movie's so dour.
Right.
It's so bleak and it's very slow. And then all of a sudden the music kicks in and it's, oh, this could be fun. It's, incel Shawshank Redemption musical time. And he starts singing.
Wait, incel Shawshank Redemption movie time. That's the episode description for this podcast episode.
But then the music it's like they don't let it loose. They don't let the imagination run wild and everything feels a little hamstrung as a result. And then you just, as a result, you're kind of stuck in these interminable sequences of just watching him wait for his next trial date, or whatever it is. And you're not looking forward to the next song because, the songs are kind of going to be a little quiet and not that upbeat. And
how long is this movie?
Too long.
2 hours and 12 minutes.
Oh, no.
2 hours and 18 minutes. Yeah, it's very long.
So, go ahead. Go ahead, Lizzie.
I was just going to say, I feel like they are fighting the genre this whole time in a way that is so frustrating to watch. And it's so long. To Chris's point, nothing really happens. Todd Phillips was doing interviews after this where he was like, it's not really a musical. It's just like every time Arthur wants to express something, instead of speaking it, he sings it. That's a musical, my guy.
Kind of a musical.
That's the definition of a musical. Yeah. Anyway, this one makes me mad.
So this movie goes on to get nominations for Razzies, including Worst Remake, Ripoff, or Sequel, and Worst Screen Combo for Phoenix and Lady Gaga. The budget was about $200 million, or at least they told us that, and it made about $207 million worldwide. It still made $207 million?
The first one made $1 billion.
Oh.
$1 billion.
So even if you just think of, the people who are going to show up the first weekend, and the movie had a precipitous drop off, right, from the first to the second weekend because word of mouth was terrible. And the reason the first one was made for almost a quarter of what this one was made for.
Oh, wow.
So the first film was one of the most successful movies of all time. It was the most successful rated R movie ever made until Deadpool and Wolverine. And I think nobody expected it. I don't think Warner Brothers expected it.
They didn't, because they split a lot of the production cost with 2 other production companies for the first one. And then I think they were mad about that when it made $1 billion.
Share the profits.
Right. So for this one, they didn't
wanted
do
all
that.
Of it.
And
so they absorbed the whole loss.
Todd Phillips was paid, I believe, $20 million. Joaquin Phoenix was paid $20 million. Lady Gaga was paid $12 million.
They paid Lady Gaga less than Joaquin Phoenix?
Have you seen?
They cursed themselves.
That checks out, though.
Okay.
To be completely fair, I feel like he carried the first film. Lizzie, well, now I'm canceled. But your above the line costs alone are higher, more or less, on this film than the entire budget of the first film, almost.
Yeah. So, what is the lesson of Joker Folie à Deux? I'm going to say, I think the lesson is never give a director final cut. You have to have studio notes. Had some executive at whatever studio just seen it and been like, you got to change some stuff. Could have been avoided. I'm guessing whatever deal he had to make this movie, he was like, here's the movie and you got to take it.
He did. I think he did not even have to test screen it.
Are you serious?
I believe so. And I believe
they made me pilot test this show.
Yeah.
Did you make $1 billion, Sam?
And more.
Remains to be seen.
I believe he'd made $1 billion on the Hangover trilogy before that.
That's
Oh,
true.
that was him too.
That's
Yeah.
Todd Phillips. He's an extremely successful director for Warner Brothers, and I think they just handed him, the car. And also, high level, Warner Brothers is going through a lot of turmoil here. This is the era of they get spun off from AT&T, they merge with Discovery, and they become Max, and now they're going back to HBO Max, and DC is under fire, and Zack Snyder is out, and James Gunn is in. And so I think that this movie was a little bit off to the side throughout all of this, and not that nobody was paying attention, but I that may have provided a little air cover until it was too late.
I think the lesson here is don't greenlight a movie based on Joaquin Phoenix's dream, which is where the idea for this one came from. Apparently, it came to him in a dream. Just say, no, thank you, Joaquin. You're a great actor.
Yeah.
All right. Flops on flops on flops. We got 2 more?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Number 3, I'll just be honest. I also saw this movie in theaters opening weekend, and I had a hell of a time. It was enjoyable in its badness. It's a little movie called Madam Webb.
Yes.
I'm already smiling. I love this bad movie. Tell folks what this movie was, continues to be.
Lizzie?
I also love this movie. It is just an unmitigated disaster. And, I think we'll get into some of the reasons maybe why. It has some of the funniest lines I've ever heard delivered with such just delicious deadpan from Dakota Johnson.
You can feel the hatred
She
from
hates
Dakota
it.
Johnson while she's acting in the movie in which she hates.
I love. It's so good. My favorite line very early in the movie is, "I hope the spiders were worth it, Mom." And it just, that really sums it up.
What was the other one where she's like, the mom was in Costa Rica doing
That was
research
just
or
for
something?
the trailer. Yeah. My
Wait,
mom
it wasn't
was
in the movie?
South America studying spiders, blah, blah, blah. I can't, hold on.
It's
Bit it.
something like
Give
my
it to
mom
us.
was in the Amazon. It's just amazing. She's flipping through her
trailer
mom's
line.
diary going, peptides, peptides.
He was
more
in the
about
Amazon with my
peptides."
mom when she was researching spiders right before she died.
Honestly, it's great. Got all the information I needed in one line.
Yes.
This movie is destined to be a camp classic. It is.
Oh, it is.
It is.
In my house,
It's totally fun.
as the kids say, this album is platinum in my house.
It
Yes.
moves.
Love it.
I love all the actors in it. Give me Adam Scott, Uncle Ben. Give me
Oh, he was in
Church
that.
Mouse Sydney Sweeney. Give
She
me
was in that.
Isabella Merced. It's I love the woman who plays her mom. Excuse me, I'm blanking on her name. She's a fantastic actress. She was from *Halt and Catch Fire*. Carrie Bichet is fantastic. It feels like the little brother running after all the big Marvel movies, tripping, landing on his face, falling down 100 stairs. But I really do. It's still fun, and I like how fun it is in its absurdity.
And can I just wax poetic a bit on the genius of Dakota Johnson?
Yeah.
She makes it fun.
Yes.
She is such an interesting actress to me and cultural figure. She's a Nepo baby, but you don't care.
Yep.
That's right.
She's often a bad actress, but you don't care.
Yep.
And there's something about her where you're like, I want it.
Yeah.
I want it. And maybe it all goes back to her being the one to finally start the cancellation of Ellen DeGeneres.
Yes.
I don't know, but
Yes.
I
That's not
love
true,
her.
Ellen.
It's honestly the energy of Dakota Johnson on Ellen's show is also the energy of Dakota
Yes.
Johnson in Madam Web.
Well, so interestingly, I guess you asked what is this movie? Technically, this is an origin story for the character of Madam Web, who does exist in the same universe as Spider-Man, I believe, in the comics. However,
Yes.
it does not in these films because does-ish. For
does-ish.
rights issues, Spider-Man cannot appear in these. These
That's
are...
why he is inside Emma Roberts' belly as we are making.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, she's in this one too.
She's in this one too.
Damn.
Everyone's in this. Everyone's in this.
Man.
Also, you didn't mention Tahar Rahim, poor Tahar
Yes.
Rahim, who plays the villain in this, who is a great actor.
Yeah.
Who, if you've seen The Looming Tower, he's excellent in that. Sam, I don't know if you remember this, but so many of his lines in this movie are ADR'd to the point where
What does that
often
mean?
his mouth... It's a, what is it?
Automated dialogue replacement. It's when you go into a recording booth after production and you
do the tracks
re-perform
again.
your lines because you either need to change something for story purposes or you need to correct a technical error in the recording.
I think it's story purposes.
It's all story purposes in this movie.
Yes, because half the time his mouth isn't even moving or it's saying something else. And the line he has is like, and I feel so bad for him.
Poor baby.
I mean, it's funny. But you mentioned Dakota Johnson's sort of detest for this. She did say in the press tour that the script that she signed on for was substantially different from what they started shooting. So I think this thing just went through, and if you look at the number of writers on it too, I think this went through a ton of changes even before they started and then continued through post-production is my guess, is that they were still trying to fix this thing.
It's 100%. And I would just want to call out this director, S.J. Clarkson, who I think is a fantastically talented television director. She's directed a lot of great TV. I have so much empathy for this person. She comes in, this is going to be her debut feature film, and the irony is she is trapped in the web of legal issues around all of these characters and Sony's attempt to build this weird cousin universe to Marvel at the same time that Marvel's going. And as a result, the script has to change in order to facilitate whatever tie-in they're trying to do.
Into the world they're making.
Yeah, the rumor is that the movie was initially supposed to tie into Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, but then they had to change it to move it into the early 2000s to tie it into Tom Holland's Spider-Man, but they couldn't show Tom Holland in the movie. And it was a period piece, but you couldn't tell what period it was.
Why do they keep doing this? I've had this conversation before in this podcast feed because we talked Marvel a few weeks ago when Thunderbolts came out. There is still this dogged commitment to honoring multiple storylines and worlds.
Yeah.
But does anyone care anymore if it connects?
No.
Well, we'll get to this in the next movie, but the multiverses have collapsed upon themselves like a dying
Also, once
star.
you do multiverse, you can just do whatever, so just do whatever.
Well, that's the thing. They eliminate consequences as quickly as they can offer fan service, and I think that's the really challenging thing with a multiverse. And you have a movie like this where it becomes a reminder that you're actually watching an inferior character who is, and I don't mean that in the pejorative sense, I mean that in the fact that she's just not, Cassandra Webb is not popular in the way Spider-Man is. And you're just, Easter eggs just remind you, I could be watching a Spider-Man movie right now.
Yeah, well, and what I think is accepted by viewing audiences is ignoring some of the rules if it just keeps a thing fun. I'll never forget one of my favorite sitcoms of all time, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. They just switched it up when they wanted to.
Yep.
The little baby Nicky shows up. He's an infant in one season, then he comes back next season and he's 5 years old. Or Aunt Viv, at the start of the show, she's a dark-skinned black woman, then all of a sudden she's a light-skinned black woman.
Yep.
Don't love Fresh Prince of Bel-Air any less. Once you connect me on a thing and I like the people and the stuff, you can ignore some of the rules and just make it a good show. But something about this superhero comic book IP, they're afraid to do that or they do it badly.
Well, yes, and they're also trying to, with this, I think, sort of reverse engineer a franchise for the Spider-Women, played by, I think, is it Celeste O'Connor, Isabella Merced, and Sydney Sweeney.
There's three Spider. Those
three.
girls are supposed to be the Spider-Women.
Yes,
the Spider Gals.
Yes, the Spider Gals.
Okay.
So that's the whole thing. Is this was a launch pad for them, I believe, more than it was for Madam Web, which is a weird move to begin with. And then also, my understanding is that Madam Web is an old blind lady.
She is.
But they were like, no. No one wants to see that. She needs to be young and hot.
All I want to see now is Dakota Johnson playing a blind Spider-Woman.
Yes.
That's 100%. All I want to see.
Do you remember the end shot of this movie? It's her in wraparound sunglasses and her fancy wheelchair spinning around at the Crow window, and I was like, yes, give me this.
You try surviving an explosion at a fireworks factory. It's not easy.
So this movie, I remember two things about it. Horrible reviews.
Yes.
Dakota Johnson was sassy the whole press tour.
Oh, yeah.
But opening weekend, me and every gay man I've ever known flocked to this film.
Yeah.
Immediately, it becomes a camp classic. Did y'all expect that?
I gotta be honest, I thought it looked kind of fun. Everyone was dumping on it, and I thought, this could be okay. I love Dakota Johnson, too. But it had an energy. Like Morbius was just so
Self-serious.
that I
Dour.
just
Yeah.
never thought it was going to find a
Yeah.
place in the landscape. And this just, I don't know. I was
Yeah.
like, it's got great line readings. That's what you need. You need stupid, great line readings that
There
are
you go.
memeable that
Yeah.
people
You
can
need
just
Dakota
have.
Johnson is the thing.
Yeah,
You do.
really do.
She is an American treasure.
Yeah.
Gosh, I love her. So during the press tour for this film, or actually afterwards, she told Bustle, quote, "It's not nice to be a part of something that's ripped to shreds, but I can't say that I don't understand." So she was, even she was like, "I get it, y'all. I get
She
it."
literally was like, this is bad.
Yeah, yeah. Rolling Stone called Madame Webb, quote, "the Cats the movie of superhero movies."
Yeah. I mean, I think it's more fun than Cats in some
agree.
ways.
Bars on the floor for that one, though. Yeah, yeah. It got, in terms of Razzies, it got Worst Picture, Worst Actress, Dakota Johnson, and Worst Screenplay. Yeah.
Screenplay is pretty not good.
Pretty
But,
bad.
you know, again, that's almost never the fault of the actual writers.
Exactly,
I feel like this
exactly.
one is an awful lot of studio meddling.
I agree. I think this became such a pretzel in attempting to make it work that I don't blame anybody involved in the production at all. You
They're
know,
doing the
I
job.
think-
They're going to work.
I just think
Yeah.
there was no way you were going to land this plane.
What's the big lesson of this movie, Madam Web? I'm gonna say the lesson for me is just like enough with the comic book IP. Enough. Find another horse to beat.
I would go with what Lizzie said. You can't reverse engineer a franchise. So you look at some of the smaller characters that succeeded in the early days of the MCU. Iron Man,
Yeah.
you know, Thor was, I believe, not one of the most popular characters. And I think they had room to breathe because they weren't being compared to the enormous properties. Madame Web comes out and it becomes an immediate also ran. And
Yeah.
that's really hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will say, I don't think we need more origin stories. I don't care how they started. Just drop me in. Drop me in to Dakota Johnson as a blind lady in a wheelchair.
Just open on
listen.
her at the mother's
Yes.
grave, being like, "Thanks for the
Yes.
spiders, Mom." And then she puts on her sunglasses,
There you
and
go.
rolls her wheelchair out,
Yeah.
and she goes to work.
Not to make it all about Fresh Prince, but you know what the Fresh Prince's origin story was? The theme song.
That's right.
That's the
That's
setup.
right.
And then you're there.
You should write a screenwriting book that's just based entirely on The Fresh Prince. I think it would do really well.
Honestly, yeah. What's the one that everyone has to read right now? Save the Cat or whatever? Is that the one people
Forget
read?
that.
Yeah, forget
yeah.
that.
Don't need that.
What do we call our book that is all about how the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air explains all
Keep it
screenwriting?
fresh. How backstory ruins your movie.
Yes!
There you go.
Okay, we're going to write this together. And by that, I mean we're going to hire a ghostwriter.
There it is.
Perfect. Yeah, we don't have
Okay.
time for that.
Yeah. Last movie in our roundup of the biggest flops of the last decade. This one is such a flop. And it's like probably one of the more serious discussions of a flop because the lead was just caught up in some like actually disturbing kind of drama. I'm talking about The Flash from 2023. It was meant to restart the DC cinematic universe. It did not. We got to name this drama before getting into the film and why it flopped. I'm not going to give everyone all the details because it's weird and goes on for a long time. But Ezra Miller, they had multiple arrests leading up to the release of this film. Lunging at folks in a bar, hitting people, throwing a chair and striking people. And Miller went on to say that this was due to, quote, complex mental health issues.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that strikes me about this is that, so they started filming, I believe, around April of 2021, but a year earlier is the first time that Ezra Miller is caught on camera choking a woman outside of a bar in Iceland. It escalates from there. In Iceland,
It's
yeah.
global.
Listen,
That's
they
a-
go international with this.
Yeah.
Now, that's sort of the first event. The thing is that, like, they could have stopped this at that point. They didn't.
That's what's
they
wild to me.
being the
It's like,
studio.
yeah, the studio knew that Ezra Miller was a problem, to say the
Yes.
least. And I remember up until the very end, they were like, we stand behind Ezra.
Yeah. And it continues to escalate, by the way. Like throughout the filming, throughout 2022, moving forward, I think the problem is that, like, their first incident is 2021, right? That's before it starts. They go ahead and they start filming. It starts to kick it up a notch around 2022, and that's when you're referencing assaults, arrests. There's more messed up stuff that I don't want to get into on this podcast, but it just starts to escalate and snowball at a rate that I think nobody could really have anticipated, but they're already in post-production. So I don't know what the conversation was, but it must have been a topic of conversation of like, they're going to stop. Like this has to stop. This will get better. This will get better. And then it just doesn't and doesn't and doesn't.
Yeah.
What's interesting is the director, Andy Muschietti, who of course also did the It movies.
I
think
those.
He's a great director. Yeah.
Yeah.
He stood behind them. Even after a lot of this was happening, he said, if we reboot The Flash, I'm not going to recast Ezra Miller.
Really? Also, just to set up for those who aren't in this world and don't know what a reboot of The Flash represents, what is The Flash? It's part of DC, right? Who is this character, Chris?
Yeah, so Barry Allen, the human name of The Flash, he is human, so that's not a good way of saying it. But he was established in Zack Snyder's Justice League, or the Zack Snyder iterations of these films, and I would argue plays a similar role as the kind of plucky young pseudo-sidekick to Ben Affleck's more brooding Batman as Tom Holland's Spider-Man to Tony Stark or Robert Downey Jr. in the Marvel universe. So it's like kind of a similar dynamic.
Okay, so the Flash is in the books a sidekick to Batman?
No, I'm saying in the movie, in the films that they
okay.
do. Yeah, exactly. And so he has the ability to run incredibly quickly and that you can go through walls.
I remember the trailer. That was cool.
Reverse time becomes the big
Yes.
theme in this film. And so this movie was announced in 2014 and it just kept getting pushed. And there were, multiple directors attached.
It was announced in 2014, doesn't get released until 2023.
Yeah, I believe the original release date was intended to be 2018, which would have been a year after Wonder Woman.
That makes sense.
It was supposed to come much earlier. Multiple directors attached, fall off, writers, etc. And Andy Muschietti comes in 2019, I think he attaches, and then the pandemic hits, and then Ezra Miller stuff starts happening. They shoot the movie. I think this movie's good. I enjoyed The Flash.
Really?
I actually like this
agree.
more than any of the other film. Like, genuinely enjoyed this movie. It's a little messy, but this obviously suffered from the Ezra Miller coverage, but I think it also just suffered from the fact that the DC extended universe that was being built under Zack Snyder was collapsing under its own weight by this point. So Justice League, Zack Snyder had to leave because it was very tragic. His daughter, I believe, committed suicide, and Joss Whedon came in to finish the film.
But Joss has problems.
He does. And so then they released the Snyder Cut, which was in 2021, and it was all falling apart. By the time The Flash came out, I believe it was already established that James Gunn and Peter Safran were going to come in and replace Snyder and Walter Hamada as the heads of the DC universe. And so you were watching a movie that had no future when you go into the theater, right? This is supposed to set up the continuation of a universe, but it's turned into a cul-de-sac.
Universe.
Exactly.
Yeah. Ooh.
And which is funny because that's actually the theme of the movie.
Yes, it is really interesting. I don't know if you watched this one, but it's good. Like Chris said, it gets messy. It's too long, but I think it's very clever in what it does in terms of the fact that instead of making it sort of an origin story about how Barry Allen became the Flash, what they do is they have him sort of reset time to try and save his mother. In doing so, he creates another version of himself. And then you watch the other version of himself get the powers, which is a clever way, I think, of sort of explaining how they got it, how they operate, how they're doing everything. Ezra Miller, you know what?
They're a great
fantastic
dual
job.
performance.
They're a great
They're
actor.
a great actor.
And
So
they perform across themselves. It becomes a
the whole
buddy
movie.
comedy of two Ezra Millers.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
and they're very good at it. They're very good at it. I will say though, I really do think it was the Ezra Miller stuff that tanked this movie, because in the first 5 minutes, the opening sequence is a little strange, and it literally kicks off with a bunch of babies flying out the window of a NICU, which is for some reason on the roof of a building that's collapsing. They put it by the helipad. They put these babies at the top. And, the Flash has to go save all these babies. And there's just like falling babies, and, NICU nurse falling. It's very upsetting. There's a baby in a microwave. And like,
why is there a baby in a microwave?
Well, the Flash put it there.
Yes. And then
to
at the end,
protect the baby.
You're right, but it's also there's a baby in a microwave.
When the baby's in danger, put it in the microwave.
Please don't do that. And then what's bizarre though is like the microwave lands, it dings. They take the baby out. So that's the whole thing where I was like, I don't love this. And then the Flash says to the poor NICU nurse who's standing there just screaming, Barry Allen is like, you should seek mental health help after this. You've experienced a trauma. The Justice League isn't very good at actually addressing that part of these things. And I was like, oh my God.
Too on the nose.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. But I should see this movie.
I didn't hate it.
It's fun.
I remember the reviews being actually decent.
Yeah, it has a
clever.
fantastic Michael Keaton performance.
Yes.
He returns as Batman from an alternate reality. He is so good. He's so scene stealing.
Okay.
I think it was the Ezra Miller of it. And meanwhile, you have David Zaslav has begun axing movies at Warner Brothers. So Batgirl gets tanked.
After they finished that one, right? It was all the way done, and they were like, no one will see it.
Coyote versus Acme gets shelved. A bunch of animated shows.
I would watch both of those. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even, so I had directed a movie that had already been released, and that was axed and a tax write-off. I was lucky. It's still available on other streaming platforms.
Called?
It's called Moonshot. If you'd watched it, it would still be on there.
If you knew what it was called.
Yeah. But I think because Zaslav was cutting all these movies for tax purposes, and then everybody saw Ezra Miller behaving in this way, and they're saying, why are you not cutting The Flash if you're cutting all of these other movies? And Zaslav had a statement, I believe at the time, saying, I saw The Flash is fantastic. I think nobody believed him. I actually think he did think The Flash was fantastic, and he thought it was going to save his universe. I remember he was
saying, like, Zaslav was like doing the rounds saying, this movie is so good.
I think it was really good for a DC movie.
Good.
Yeah.
And I don't think he was lying, but it came off as a duplicitous move, I think. And it was viewed as if he didn't have integrity or consistency with the way he was going about it.
I think they thought that it was good enough and Ezra Miller was good enough in it that people would not care about what they had been doing. And they were wrong.
They were wrong. Well, and this leads me to the last question about this movie, The Flash from 2023. What is the lesson here? And for me, the lesson is, like, never make anyone in a production of any sort irreplaceable.
Yeah.
Everybody can be replaced, and sometimes they need to be replaced. That's it.
Yeah, it's just not that was what I had jotted down too, is like, this worth, continuing to elevate them at both the movie's expense and I think their expense. Like, it's irresponsible to a certain degree to continue giving them.
Yeah. And it's not helpful to Ezra Miller's recovery.
Right.
What's the lesson for you? Go ahead.
That's the difficulty with the multiverse too, or like if any given movie exists to get you to watch the next movie, continuity can become more important than anything else all of a sudden.
This is why, for me, the moral of the story with all these flops, because we've run through them all now, they're all actually meditations on how continuity can screw up your movie.
Yeah.
Continuity from stage to film in the case of Cats. Continuity from one movie to its sequel in Joker. Folie. Continuity of these comic book epic worlds in Madam Webb and in The Flash. We live in this moment of Hollywood existing IP where we treat movies like TV shows. We had this chat on the Marvel episode a few weeks ago. Marvel introduced the TVification of film. So it used to be TV shows fit together. This season fits with that season. This episode comes before that episode. And this spinoff ties to this other sitcom. But movies could be and usually were standalone unless you were like getting Godfather 1, 2, and 3. But now you've built these worlds and must exist in these worlds of IP where everything has to connect. And that is never what I want in a good movie. Is
Yeah, I
this
don't
the
care.
moral of the story of the flops of the last decade? Stop with the continuity. Let a movie be a movie. My hands are in the air. I'm really mad about this, as you can
I
tell.
love that. Let a movie be a movie.
Let a movie be a movie.
Well, it is a great sentiment, but unfortunately, movies are now going to be advertisements because if you didn't see HBO's or Max or Warner Discovery's new announcement, they are launching the Storyverse, which allows
The hell is a
brands
Storyverse?
to access iconic film franchises for their commercials. So if State Farm wants to do a Matrix style commercial,
Are you serious?
yeah, that's a new, and I'm sure they're going to make a lot of money.
So I'm reading the headline from Deadline. Warner Brothers Discovery launches WBD Storyverse, aiming to engage fans with, quote, original IP through a branded lens. So long
What
story
does
short,
that
now the
mean?
ads have entered the multiverse?
Kind of, yeah. So, like, did you see the one Harry Met Sally?
Let's just mourn that.
Yeah.
That's bad.
Well, you know what? Just to tie it back to one of our flops, maybe they got the idea from Madam Webb, where the villain was crushed by a PepsiCo sign. There you go. If that's what it's going to be, I'll take more.
Okay. Yeah, you mentioned When Harry Met Sally, Chris. How does that tie in?
They just did that commercial with
Yeah.
Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan. They returned for, and I'm going to forget the brand, so I will look it up. It was it was the first time it was a Super Bowl commercial, and it was
Oh, it's a Unilever When Harry Met Sally
the
Hellman's commercial.
Hellman's commercial, and they recreate the diner scene, or a couple moments. It's a 30-second commercial, and it's with those actors.
Let me tell you something.
Yeah.
Fresh Prince would never do this to me.
Well, no, because
Keep
Will
it
Smith
fresh.
slapped Chris Rock on stage, and none of the brands want to touch him right now. Yeah.
So the moral of this story is all of the biggest flops of the last decade, part of their problems came from continuity. But in fact, the future of not just movies, but advertising is IP continuity.
Because the problem is all the biggest hits were also part of that continuity.
Okay.
Keep
Well,
it
there you
fresh.
have it. Wait, does that mean we get a Cats multiverse with advertising tie-ins?
I
And
hope
buttholes.
so. Yes.
I would love that. On that lovely note, thinking of cats and CGI rear ends, we've gone through our flops. We've learned some great lessons. I've been so honored to have the host of one of my favorite film podcasts on this episode. Tell folks again who you are and what your show is.
Lizzie?
I'm Lizzie Bassett. Our show is What Went Wrong, hosted by me and Chris Winterbauer here. And every episode we cover the wacky behind-the-scenes story of a different movie and everything that went wrong, because every movie is a miracle, even Cats.
And our goal is just to get you to watch them and love movies more.
Every movie is a miracle, including Cats.
Mm-hmm.
That made me warm inside. I like
are.
that.
I truly believe that.
All right. With that, listeners, viewers, go watch some flops this weekend. They can be fun. I recommend you start with Cats, then go to Madam Webb. Do whatever you need to do to get into a good space. Might involve alcohol or some other things, but have fun. With that, I'll see you on the flip side. Thanks for checking out my show. Bye.